Hello everybody and welcome to Mystics MMOs. I'm your host, Mystic Raven. Alright guys, so by request I've been asked to make a new Stamplar PVE build for Wolf Hunter. Now I'm currently taking a break from this DLC, but it's been requested by one of my patrons and I'm going to honor that request. So with no further ado, let me introduce you guys to the new build, Moonstruck. All right, let's go ahead and get into it, shall we? Okay, I'm going to go into the character sheet. This is a bow dual wield build. It's pretty standard. If you want to go with the 2H, there are different ways to configure a 2H into PVE build and rotations, but this build is pretty standard that it's using the bow and the dual wield build configuration. Now, you're going to see my stats, my max health at 18,313, max stamina at a very nice 41,412, stamina recoveries at 1561. Our weapon critical prior to a buff or a builder is up at 48.4, and our spell resistance and physical resistance is a little low. I need to put the CP points into that. I'll go over that when I get in, go over the CP system. But sitting really nice. Everything's been allocated into stamina. We are using the Thief Mundus, and we're going to be using max health and max stamina food. And of course we have, yep, werewolf. All right, let's go to the dual wield side. And when we come to the dual wield, you'll notice that nothing much has changed except the weapon criticals went up to 51.4 and stamina coverage dropped down 1511. Okay. Everything else is pretty standard. Let's get into the set, shall we? We're going to be using the Hulking Draugr set. If you're going to be using werewolf, Hulking Draugr really works with the werewolf this DLC. Why? Well, it's very simple. When you come down to the werewolf passives, right? Okay. Reduce the cost of remaining, it's like somewhere here. Trying to find it, It's probably in the description. Okay, right here, yeah. While transform your light attacks, apply a bleed, physical damage over 8 seconds, your heavy attacks deal 50% splash damage, and your max stamina is increased by 30%. Hulking Draugr is going to apply the base for this percentage to scale. So it's very important to understand that. That's why Hulking Draugr is a really, really good set with Wolf Hunter, especially if you're going to be using these type of configurations. Okay, so no surprise, we're going to go with the Hulking Draugr. Now we're going to use the Hulking Draugr bow, Nirnhone, weapon damage enchantment increase. Ideal. We're also going to be using a Hulking Draugr's dagger. Now with I'm using a red guard. If you're a Bosner, or I mean a Khajiit, you wouldn't need to use the dagger. But if you're going to go with Bosner or Redguard, you're going to want to use that dagger so you can get your critical values higher. So we're going to use a Nirnhone dagger with poison damage glyph. We're also going to use a Hulking Draugr sword. I don't need 2 daggers. That's overkill, right? I'm going to use a sword and I'm going to keep it precise. That way I get additional critical value. I'm also going to have a chance when I'm swapping out, if I do a heavy attack, I can keep my uptime on my weapon damage. So it's just simple. So poison, weapon damage, and then when you take a look at the passives in Twin Blade and Blunt and Dual Wield, we're going to get that lovely Twin Blade and Blunt. Each sword increases our damage by 2.5, and we're getting a 1095 from the dagger and the value. Okay. Okay. Also, we're going to opt with Celine's on this set. Why? Max stamina. Once again, we're getting a max stamina towards our base stats, and then also it's a really nice proc for damage. Really, really nice. So, but we're going to say all divine on our gear. So we have the Celine's heavy. Keep in mind, we want to keep that undaunted passive of 6%. That's going to also increase our base stats as well with the stamina. So we're going to go 6% We don't want to deviate from that at all. That's why the dagger becomes important, because you can put one more piece of medium armor, but you lose to the base stat. That's not worth it. So go with the dagger, increase the critical value that way. This way you can maintain the Undaunted passive of 6%. So we're going to maintain that with 1 heavy. We're going to use the chest of Two-Fang Snake. And of course we have a light, I'll get into Two-Fang. We're using a light divine health of Celine's. So 1 light, 1 heavy. So our secondary set is our Jack of Two-Fang Snake. 2 reasons why you're going to use this set. Why? It's going to give us penetration. We need penetrating value, right? We cannot ignore the law of penetration in this game. It's very crucial, because the less penetrating value they have, the less it's deducted from our tooltip damage output. So we want to go ahead with the Two-Fang Snake also, instead of using another pen set, because it has a critical modifier to it. So we're getting 804 on the critical. So that is critical that we're using this set for our penetration set with this build. Okay, so Two-Fang Snake, Hulking Draugr, and Selene. So we have the chest, divine, max stamina ideal, belt, divine, max health ideal. We have the bracers of the Two-Fang Snake, divine, max health ideal. We have the guards of the Two-Fang Snake, divine, a max health ideal. And of course, divine feet, max stamina ideal. Now on the jewelry, we're going to use the Hulking Draugr. So remember, we're using the weapons, so we're going to use the jewelry of Hulking Draugr. But this is the kicker. We want to maintain recovery at a high point. So we're going to use 2 infused jewelry with stam recovery. This allows us to use the Bloodthirsty to increase the damage when enemies drop below that 9%. And we're also going to be able to increase the weapon damage with 1 glyph. Okay, so really, really nice. Also keep in mind, to get your major brutality with this build, you will be depending on potions. Now I don't have potions, don't have potions made, but you definitely want ones with recovery and major brutality. Let me see if I can even find a, it's under consumables. It's maybe under the lunchbox. Oh, yeah. Consumables and the alchemy. Got it. So let me come up here. Let me find something that gives me major brutality. Okay, right there. Very important that you're going to utilize a... So when I hit this and then I go back in, prior to my proc, I'm getting that 2338, and that, well, that'll go higher. So we definitely want that major brutality. Did I pick the right one? I didn't. And oh, it's on the food is why. Okay, there we go. Derp. Okay. Now we come in. Now we're at 2.7. Okay, so very important. Major brutality and recovery. Definitely. All right, so we've gone over the sets. Let's go over the skills and how we've laid them out. Okay, bow bar. We're going to use the power of light. No surprise, pretty standard. Poison injector. Once again, standard. Because of, you know, the dot applied effect, really nice. Endless hail. Now somebody's going to ask, are you going to want to, can I use a master or maelstrom bow? Please do not use any on this build. You're all static with the configuration. If you try to put on one of those, you'll lose DPS, so it's not worth it. You could drop the Hulking Draugr, I guess. Bow, you'll pick up a little weapon damage, but given the fact that your werewolf is going to be on this bar, I don't advise it. Okay? Just saying, because you want that stamina. So don't use any master or maelstrom weapons with this build. Okay? You'll lose. Trust you and me. Okay, endless hail. Pretty good. Pretty good. We're also going to use rearming trap standard. Here's the deal. I'm going to put binding javelin. Typically, I use expert hunter on here to throw up the damage modifier, but instead I'm going to use binding javelin. I'm not really going to use this unless I need a ranged ability, but I want it slotted. Why do I want it slotted? Why, Mystic? You're nuts. You're just crazy. Okay. I'm going to use Piercing Spear. Increase your critical damage by 10%. But here's the kicker. To get my critical damage to increase by 10%, I have to have an AEDRIC spear ability slotted. So I want to slot the ability, right? I can't put biting jabs on this bar because it's on my dual wield bar. So I'm going to use the biting javelins to do what? Increase my modifier by 10%, thus increasing my damage output. Blam. Tested it with the one. It's just better to do it this way. All right, so there you have it. We're going to use Werewolf Berserker. Do not use the alpha in PVE. People have been doing that, but they haven't realized what the alpha does. The alpha has the wolves. It applies a taunt, right? There's a taunt being applied to the alpha. Now, PvP, you're better going with alpha, to be honest with you, because the taunt's irrelevant. But in PvP, in PvE, you don't want to do that unless you're planning on pulling aggro. So do not go alpha if you're going to run werewolf in PvE. You want to take berserker. Why? Because you're going to get that bleed and you're not going to taunt any targets. All right, it's been tested, it's been done. Okay, so there you have it. Do not do alpha. But this isn't going to be your main ulti, but when you do go with this, and I will demonstrate this, you're going to get a shitload of stamina out of this, and it's going to scale your damage modifiers tremendously. Okay, so coming off to the dual wield side, we're going to have rendering slashes, pretty standard. We're going to have the razor caltrops, of course. We're going to have the biting jabs. Now, this is also going to do what? Give us our major savagery. Here's the trick. I'm going to be running a lot of melee up in the front when I'm on my dual wield bar, so I'm going to use the spike bone shield. It's going to do what? Be a shield system just like the magical classes. It's just going ahead and cushion my damage. I'm absorbing 31% of my max health for 6 seconds. All right, so pretty nice. Repentance, good sustainability. Okay, and then we're going to use the Flawless Dawnbreaker. Keep in mind in the Undaunted passive, with that, we're also, Fighters Guild. We're also going to get Slayer, increase weapon damage by 3% for each Fighters Guild ability slot. So you see that on this bar, and we maintain because we have the rearming trap on the other. So we distribute our damage as evenly as possible without losing. All right, so there's that setup here. Now, let's go ahead. I'm going to demonstrate the werewolf really quick. I'm just playing around. I'm just trying to get my ulti generated. I'm not worried about anything. I'm just... Gotta get like 200 and something. And if you want to know how much my goes up to, there's 19. It's 277. It goes up higher too. Can get over 3 if everything's timed right. Was that 150? Okay, we're almost there. Almost. Come on. Just messing around. Okay, there we go. Okay, and then we come in here. We got 52,000 max stamina, 1,500 recovery, and 24. Okay, looks good. Okay. Okay, so you guys get the idea. So let's go over to the champion points really quick, and we'll go over this. All right, coming into the Astronaut, you want 9 into Physical Weapon Expert. You want 48 in Master Arms. We're going to be dealing a lot of dot damage, but we still want to put direct into Master Arms to help scale our other effects, including Monster Set. Okay, Thaumaturge, 18.24. So you see I have 48 points allocated in the Thaumaturge, and I have 48 in the Master at Arms. I'm going to use Precise Strikes at 14.14%. I usually keep this around 12, but given the fact that we've got more CP points this DLC, we can allocate this higher to increase critical damage modifier. It's not by much, but from 14 to 12, but it is a definite increase. Piercing is very important, so we have 57 points in to give us that other 4,303, because keep in mind we're not using the Lover Mundus, we're using a pen set, so we would need to allocate more into piercing. Mighty is going to be at 13% with 64 points allocated. We're also going to put 40 into Ironclad. Now here was the whole thing I forgot to do. I need to increase my resistances. So it's going to be almost half, not quite, because we need more physical resistance, a little bit more. Okay, so 34 and 22. Hardy, keep in mind we're a werewolf, so when we're in werewolf form, we are susceptible to what? Poison. So we want to deter some of that extra poison damage. So we're going to put 1301, Elemental Defender at 909, Thick Skin at 13. If you are having hard time with poison damage as a werewolf, you can opt to take off the weapon damage glyph and go with poison resistance glyph. Okay, so just keep that in mind. I do not recommend taking off recovery though. Bastion, we are using a shield system. Not a lot of points allocated, but just a little. 6.11. Quick recovery, 909. We're going to use Warlord at 1208. Sprinter, 13.22. Tenacity, 14%. Mooncalf, 14%. Healthy, just a moderate 4.22. Keep in mind, I wanted that wild running passive. But one of the big things is keeping Shadow Ward at 10.22 and Tumbling also at 10.22. And that is how the champion points are allocated. So I really think this is a really good build for this DLC. As I've demonstrated, you have a tremendous amount of stamina, a very significant amount of damage. It definitely doesn't play to the meta, but guess what? It still keeps up. All right, guys. Once again, I want to thank everybody today for watching. If you have any questions or comments, just post below. Once again, I'm Mystic Raven. This is Mystic's MMOs. And as always, thank you for watching and have a nice day.